Welcome to tonight's forum for candidates seeking contested municipal races in the April 2nd election. I'm Gary Castor, Managing Editor of the Jefferson City News-Tribune, and I'll serve as moderator of tonight's forum. I want to take this opportunity to thank the city for the use of the council chambers for this forum, as well as JCTV for taping and airing the forums. We're also streaming these forums on NewsTribune.com. Tonight, our first forum will feature the candidates for municipal judge. That forum will be followed by forums for city prosecutor and mayor. Prior to tonight, the candidates were advised the rules of the forum. As we begin the questions, the candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Seated next to me is Rebecca Martin, News Tribune City Editor. She'll serve as timekeeper for those responses. None of the questions were shared with the candidates beforehand. During the course of the forum, I may ask a candidate a follow-up question in hopes of getting a clearer understanding of the answer. A candidate may also be granted time to respond or to rebut an answer from a previous question. And now let me introduce the candidates for tonight's Municipal Judge Forum. To my left is Brian Stumpy. He's served 8 years as Jefferson City Prosecutor and is a partner at the law offices of Stumpy and Shrimp LLC. Stumpy's been an attorney for about 14 years. In the center is Tim Anderson. He previously has served 29 years as a Missouri Assistant Attorney General before retiring. And to my right is Angela Silvey. She's a partner at Silvey and Associates and has worked as an attorney in Jefferson City since 2014. The order for the opening and closing statements were determined before the forum by drawing lots. So we're going to jump right in and start asking the questions at this point. So we'll start with Brian. How would you define the role of the municipal judge?
Well, first off, thank you, Gary, for having us here tonight. We're all glad to be here and the chance to talk to the community. The role of municipal judge is one that we take an oath to the Constitution and we call balls and strikes. The law is what the law is. The facts presented to the judge, and the judge determines what the proper sentence should be. It's the role of a person with wisdom and discernment, and one that can use that wisdom to determine what the proper outcome should be. Not all cases are judged on the same facts. It's different to have a 17-year-old kid that gets a speeding ticket and a 22-year-old guy that gets his 5th speeding ticket. They're different situations and circumstances. So each case has to be looked at those facts. The judge will then rule on that according to what the language of the ordinance is, what the Constitution requires that judge to do.
All right, thank you. Tim, same question.
Very similar answer. Any judge, the role of any judge is to do justice, to be just to those who are appearing before him or her. As Brian indicated, you'll have every case is different. There are no two cases that are identical, but it's important to bring in not only knowledge and not only experience, but again the word wisdom to any deliberation, to any verdict that a judge would make. Municipal court is more of an entry-level court, hopefully for people. That's the end court that they'll enter into. So it's important that they be dealt with, they be interacted with in a just manner, so they understand that the system is set up to help them, not to hurt them, ultimately, and to help the community.
Thank you. Angela.
The role of the municipal judge is not only to be fair and just, but to make sure that the citizens are being understood, that the Constitution is being followed. One of the things that I think is important is to make sure that the taxpayers are not paying for things that they shouldn't be paying for. We have a real problem with people not being able to pay their fines, and then they get placed in jail. Well, then they can't pay their fine because they're in jail, or they possibly lose their job because they're in jail waiting to pay that fine. And then what happens is they can't pay that jail bill, so the taxpayers end up paying that jail bill for them. If we can find a way to fix that, that would be what I would suggest the municipal judge do. And the other is starting to look at some other programs. The municipal judge runs the courtroom. The municipal judge should make sure that not only is the Constitution followed and the law is followed, but what can we do to make sure the taxpayers and the citizens who don't have to go to municipal court and may never deal with municipal court, that their voices are also heard, and that the resources that the municipal court is using, that they're using them wisely. We don't have a mental health court program, and I think that's something that we could definitely expand on and start doing to make sure that people are not coming back to municipal court and having this large turnover and recidivism over and over and over back in our municipal court systems.
All right, thank you. Next question, we'll start with Tim. Do you think sentencing practices have been too harsh or too lax in general?
Well, it depends, of course, Gary, where you're talking about. Across the state of Missouri, it really varies from county to county, from city to city, municipality to municipality. It really all depends on the particular judge. Some of my experience have been in doing cases, and just one example would be a child sex case. And the recommendation from the Department of Probation was 10 years. That was based on the fact that this was this fellow's first offense, although the severity of the offense was such that, in my opinion, it argued for something much more. And so I requested, and the judge eventually gave the defendant 26 years. So it really depends on the circumstance. Each individual case will argue, and again, the use of one's experience and knowledge, and then hopefully wisdom, should maybe amplify what a judge does in any particular case. From the municipal court, I've heard different things, but by and large, I think it has been a fair court, and I would hope to keep it running in a fair and just fashion. Thank you.
All right. Angela, same question.
Well, I think it reverts back to the first question you asked on the role of the municipal judge. The role of the municipal judge is to make sure that sentencing is done properly and that fines are not going over the threshold of what the statute allows. So in this municipal court, from what I have had to deal with previously from dealing with Judge Walker, I feel like that the sentencing that has been done in this city has been fair and just. I have been to cities where it has not been fair and just, and that's why the legislature has had to enact laws to go back and say you're not doing what's in the best interest of your citizens. So I think it varies by county, it varies by city, and that's why this election is so important, because we need a municipal judge that's going to follow the rules, that's going to make sure that sentencing is fair, and is going to make sure that the citizens are all heard and have a voice in this town.
All right, thank you. Brian.
Thank you, Gary. I think by and large that the question was, have they been too lenient or too harsh? Was that your
Too harsh or too lax? Yes.
in this court? I think they've been, Judge Walker and I sometimes would disagree. I'd want a harsher sentence than he would want, or I'd want a more lenient sentence than he would want. But I trusted his judgment. I think he did a very fair job of that in that role. When Senate Bill 5 and 572 came into play, it very much restricted the ability to have some sentences in the city court. It changed how you do amendments on tickets. It changed how you can do community service on tickets, and it required things that were not required in the past. We were certain to strictly adhere to those new guidelines and those new rules. People that could not pay their fines, we had to do community service to work their fines off that way. There's a statutory requirement of $10 per hour to work those fines off, and those that could actually not pay them off, we had to do community service. We increased community service by and large in the first 2 years by over 400% of what it was previously. And really, it's going to be a case-by-case basis for the judge to deal with. As we said earlier, the first-time offender, the fifth-time offender, by and large, as Tim stated, it's an entry-level court. But just because it's an entry-level court with entry-level crimes, it doesn't mean the person that's in there is an entry-level criminal. So sometimes we have people in court that they're under investigation for murders as well as speeding. You have people that are involved in gang activity, and when you see those people, identify those people that just don't get it and won't change their lifestyles, you need to make sure that the sentence is according to that. But by and large, I think it's been a very just system we've had in place for the past 8 years.
All right, thank you. Next question will go to Angela. We'll start with her. It comes from reader Jeff Holzem. He asks, what penalties would you impose instead of fines or jail time for minor offenses?
Well, I think community service is one of the areas that we could expand on, but changing it up a little bit. So right now, some of our community service really focuses on the Samaritan Center, Goodwill, places like that where people are going and they're unloading trucks and things like that. If we could get more smaller nonprofits involved in this community, and there's a ton of them that people don't even realize we have, so many great nonprofits in this community, and say, what are there some things that you need help with that we can get the citizens that are committing these small crimes in municipal court involved in, even if it was picking up trash for the city. Maybe if they did that, then they would realize how wonderful this community is and go, you know what, I don't want to do things that cost this city money because I want it to be where I'm giving back to the community instead of taking from it. So I think if we can expand some of those programs to reach out to maybe some more nonprofits, or even working with the city on what are some areas we need help with, cleaning up the parks, cleaning up some of the areas that are maybe run down a little bit, and kind of reaching out and figuring out some projects that people can be more involved in.
Thank you. Brian.
One thing that I've had a track record of doing over the past 8 years is when a teenage person comes in with a speeding ticket, supposed to go on 15 miles over the speed limit. Well, that means they have a fine and cost of $141. That more than likely the mom's going to pay or the dad's going to pay. Their insurance will go up by about $3,000 for the next 3 years. We defer them into a different program where they do 1 hour of community service for every mile over their speeding. That keeps the points off their license, keeps the insurance from going up, makes that person take responsibility for their actions instead of their parents doing it as well. We've also implemented programs where we require students to go back to school to finish their high school education. We've got them in alcohol counseling, drug counseling. Conditions are family counseling. So over and over again, when we identify issues that are causing the root problems, we try and pair that person with someone in the community that can help address those issues. We have a mentorship program in town at the court as well that Charles Jackson runs for us, that he takes people aside and talks to and tries to direct them in the right direction. So there are several different options we've been using historically in the court. We've had kids that have cleaned up trash downtown from the courthouse to the Capitol as part of their community service. We've had people that have washed police cars as part of their community service. We've had people that were required to move back home with their parents and get family counseling and then finish their high school education. There's a program where a lady comes and helps people with finding scholarship money for these students that were one-time high school dropouts that now can become successful and go on to college. There's a various myriad ways we can do different things that are out there. We've created programs to help jobless people find jobs, homeless people find homes, addicts find treatment, and mental health people find mental health providers for them.
Thank you. Tim.
I think all good ideas by both Angela and Brian. I think it's an opportunity for creativity. Community service certainly is something that can have an impact, I would think, on especially a youthful offender, somebody who's younger who may not have done something before. But it's an opportunity for creativity. If, for example, an individual did something that harmed or potentially harmed somebody else, it might be an opportunity for them to have a chance to visit with somebody who was injured doing something dumb, something they should not have done. If the previously injured person would be interested in it. I like the word Brian used, mentor or disciple a person individually, to sit down one-on-one with a person and kind of give them a little bit of wisdom. And there are people who are affiliated with the court who can do that, and that's important. One of the things I did when I first moved to town 33 years ago was get involved with Prison Fellowship, and that's a group started by Charles Colson, who was involved in Watergate. And one of Colson's entities within Prison Fellowship is Justice Fellowship. And what they did there, some of the recommendations they had were very creative. For example, they talked with victims of crimes, and they said, what would you like out of what happened here? And so often a victim would say, I would like to sit down across the table from the person who violated me in whatever way, shape, or form, and ask them questions. Why did you choose my house to steal my TV? Or why did you choose me to assault? And they said that was more helpful to both the victim and the defendant if the defendant also is willing to do that, to put themselves out and be willing to sit across the table. That was more helpful for the people involved, and it had a bigger deterrent effect than one would have thought. So things like that, there's an opportunity for creativity.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Brian. It comes from reader Eleanor Klein. All three of you have said you support expanding current programs to aid those with addictions, mental health challenges, homelessness, and chronic unemployment. What programs are in place and being used currently? How are they evaluated? And if so, by whom and what are the results?
There are about 6 programs that we have currently. We courts every Wednesday. There's only 4 Wednesdays in a month. So one Wednesday there's someone there to assist people that are jobless to find jobs. One time there's someone there to help homeless people find housing. Once for mental health patients to find mental health services, and once for addicts to find addiction things. We also have a mentor there for people every week in court, and we have a DWI court program. That was started 7 years ago. It's an online program that costs taxpayers $0. In that program, there's an outcome-based evaluation to determine how successful the program is. The national repeat offender or recidivism rate for a first-time DWI is 20%. Those that have gone through the DWI court program through the municipal court in Jefferson City is about 4%, or 500 times lower than the national average. So it's been very successful. With the mental health court, it's not really mental health court per se, but mental health programs, it's kind of hard because I can't put you in jail for 5 years in the city court. Our sentences are limited. What we can and can't do is not extreme as other courts can do. And so the teeth that you have to say you must attend this or you must do that are very limited. So it's got to be where you identify a person that has a specific need through the prosecutor reading police reports, through the judge talking with them as they fill out different forms in court. And when you identify those needs, you try and set that person on a certain docket where the mental health provider or the addiction provider is going to be present at that time. They then go meet with those people if they're willing to, and we say, here are the services that are available, but they have the choice to utilize those services or not utilize those services. How we determine if they're successful or not, every quarter or so we get a report from our community partners that go through the people they've talked to and what's happening with those people. And then we do a follow-up check through court documents and CaseNet to see whether or not they've been repeat offenders at that time.
All right. Tim.
You know, the major impetus of any court is to make their business zero. That would be the goal, is to have nobody there in city court because nobody's offending. But that's not human nature. Human nature is we're selfish, we are inclined to do wrong things, and so we will always have city court. But the goal is to keep people from coming to court in the first place, to keep them from offending, from harming others, from violating the laws that we have. Some of the alternative sentencing that we've got here is very good, is a good opportunity for people who have committed lesser offense to basically take the off-ramp from what could become very serious and get the help that they need, whether it's driving while intoxicated, whether it's use of drugs, whether it's they're a veteran, they've got some circumstances that those of us who are not serving have not had to encounter, or if they've got some mental health problems. Now, the key, I think, would be in the screening of people. Are they, you know, if I did something, I may say, well, I'd like to go into this alternative sentencing. The important thing, I think, is to screen them correctly, to say, are they somebody who really needs this help? Would this help indeed? And it would have to be something where they understand going in, they're going in voluntarily. You know, they're not going in to skip out on anything, but they're going in and they're signing up for the obligations and the demands of the program, and I think that's important.
Angela?
The problem is we don't have a mental health court system. And the county is working on one, and what would be great is if the city could have one. And what that looks like, and what we're doing now is great. We're handing people some resources. We're hoping that they'll use them. When you have someone that has an addiction problem or has a mental health problem, most of the time they're probably not taking that phone number and following up. They need help. They need guidance. Most of the counties that have mental health court programs, Jackson County has a really good one. St. Louis has one. They're all over the nation. They screen, as an attorney, you can ask the prosecutor to look at the case, screen that person, and say, does this person fall within the category of where we could put them on a different docket for mental health treatment? It does have to be voluntary. They cannot just be forced to do it. A lot of times their attorneys will work with them and say, this is a great program for you to do. It will help ensure that you don't have a conviction on your record. What we're not doing now is allowing people to have that opportunity in a kind of a diversion program. So a lot of the mental health courts do a diversion. If the person completes the mental health court treatment, which is seeing a counselor, doing any kind of treatment they need, they then don't get charged with that crime. Because let's say that it was a person who has schizophrenia and they didn't leave a hotel and the police were called to remove that person, and then we find out it was because they didn't take their medication and their guardian couldn't find them. Do we need to put that person with a criminal conviction, or do we need to help them on a better path? And that's what mental health courts do all over the country, is go, okay, you're in this category where we really need to help you, not just throw a misdemeanor on your record and make you pay a fine, because that person's not going to learn from that. That person needs that follow-up treatment. And that's what I'm suggesting that we do, is we do an actual mental health court program here in this city.
Very good. Next question, we'll go with Tim. Beyond, all three of you have mentioned mental health courts. Beyond that, what new or expanded programs would you consider if you were a municipal judge, and why? What current resources are available for expansion, both as the capacity of current programs and money for expansion?
Again, the major purpose of court is to deter people from reoffending and to, if possible, make a victim whole. We've got some good programs that would be possible, and some that are working right now. I don't know that, at least beginning, that I would add to those courts. I would, the idea of a veterans court, if we have that need, would be something that would be of interest. But other things like the program that I mentioned, the Justice Fellowship Program, where you permit, if the victim is willing and if the defendant is willing, you facilitate, I guess, their opportunity to sit across the table and speak if they're both willing. I think something like that might go a long way. So I think we've got some good programs. Where the rubber hits the road, though, is deterring people from committing the crime and from coming back or doing something more serious. And so often that happens, especially if you get substances like alcohol, like drugs involved. If they have some kind of mental issue, that's what leads to going beyond municipal court to the circuit court.
Thank you. Angela?
And I would agree with that. With the victim program, I was actually part of that. Our home was burglarized by a young gentleman who was in high school, and he stole my laptop, which had my master's thesis on it, and needless to say, I was not the nicest person about it. And they came to us and asked us, what did we want to do? What punishment did we feel was enough for that? And I really had to take a moment back and put aside the anger I had for him stealing this very important document and go, what could maybe change his life if we did something different? And so they facilitated us coming to a room, sitting down, and me being able to explain to him the panic that he put me in and what he did to me. And then we got to kind of follow him a little bit and see how he did. I didn't want him to have a criminal record for that. He was a young kid. He made a mistake. He came from a very poor family. He didn't have anything, and he saw an opportunity to get an Xbox and a laptop. We recovered everything from him. And I just think those are better programs. If we can find ways to direct people in a better path, they won't continue to commit crime. And that's really what the city needs, is not to have people to keep coming back to city court because that costs the taxpayers money, but also finding a way that helps the citizens in a way like that as well, I think is a great program.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you. I think you had a two-part question there. One, how do you expand the programs, and two, how do you fund those programs?
Yes.
The expansion of programs is kind of a multi-layered answer here. One, we don't have mental health court. We don't have a veterans court. We don't have a drug court. All those, to properly run those, you'll have to hire more employees in the situation. You'll have to have a place to put those kind of court programs. And those things get expensive. If the violation the person has been accused of is also a state violation, you could work with the county prosecutor and the county courts to transfer those cases to the county court where they already have the programs in place to run them through that program if you identify there are certain indicators that make them a viable candidate for those programs. Outside of that, one thing that we do have in town that we've not utilized very well is Lincoln University. There's a lot of nursing students there. There's a lot of psychology students there. There's a lot of social work students there. There's a lot of criminal justice students there. If we can take and use that pipeline of students there that are willing to get into those fields and use those students to assist the court in helping to develop these programs and monitor these programs, it can be done on an externship level, which would be zero fiscal note to the city and cost taxpayers no money. We don't have a lot of frivolous money to spend in the courts. We've worked very hard. The DWI court program, Preferred Family went out and got a grant for that to develop the Portal online program for that, so there's no cost to the taxpayers. The program is then funded by the offender, that they pay a fee to take the classes, which is less than the fine would have been in the first place. They do a VIP and a MAP program as well. But I think we need to utilize the Lincoln students more where we can to expand those programs and send them to the county when we identify as potential uses for their court systems.
All right, thank you. Next question will go with Angela. As a municipal judge, what partnerships would you form with groups and agencies in town to improve safety in the city? Can these partnerships, in turn, compromise a judge's ability to be impartial or fair?
Well, I mean, first of all, the police are who we need to work with the most and make sure that that we're taking into consideration that they're the ones writing the tickets. And if we're just throwing tickets out and they're out there writing tickets, is that really deterring crime? The other thing is working with our firefighters. We have a lot of abandoned property here in town, and I've actually reached out to several of them and talked to them and asked them if that's affected them in any way with their job, because if there are homeless people living in abandoned properties and they were to start a fire, our firefighters are the ones that are going to be putting their lives on the line to put those fires out. So I think working with all of those members of the community, but also working with Preferred Family Health. I think Lincoln has some great opportunities that we can work with them to get their students involved if there's things that they would like to be involved in. The problem is you can't force people to be involved in things, and it sounds great to have Lincoln students be involved in stuff, but we also have to make sure that we're not running any liability issues with the city, because you are talking about, especially if we do a mental health court program, you're talking about people, their medical issues. So we can't just have anybody handling those programs. So Preferred Family Health is usually the one in town that a lot of people use because they have trained professionals that come in and work with people. I would suggest that we try and stick with that, especially when we're talking about substance abuse. We're also talking about people that have committed crime. So we don't want to just pair someone that's committed crime with a young student if we don't know the full details of their mental health, of their background. Just because they've had a speeding ticket, I think it's been mentioned here in municipal court, doesn't mean they don't have tickets in other counties. And sometimes we see that. We see someone that has committed crime in multiple counties for multiple different offenses, from anything from a domestic violence to a traffic ticket. So we don't want to pair someone up on a traffic ticket that has a history of domestic violence and place them with a nursing student at Lincoln or something like that, I think that we would be setting ourselves up for liability on that.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
Thank you, Gary. Groups we could partner with in the community to make our community more safe. We already have Ted Solomon, who's the mental health liaison, that helps us out. We have Preferred Family, we have Pathways, we have Charles Anderson, but we also, I think, should get more involved with the high schools. I think there's, and also with Lincoln in general, to go in and talk to the students about things that you do that mess you up in life, and things that don't seem that bad as when you're 17 years old or 21 years old, but really aren't that good in the long run when you look back on things. To have the prosecutor and judge go talk to the incoming freshmen at Lincoln, to talk to the football team about things that hang you up and miss your rules, the softball team, the wrestling team, and those types of things as well, I think would be very beneficial, because it allows you that one-on-one time with those students and answer questions in those areas. I also think it'd be important if we could find a way to involve like a Medicaid office as well. A lot of times people have needs that need to be met. With the 80% of all people in the county jail have drug addiction issues. Of those, 80% of those people have mental health issues. So 60% of people in jail right now have dual disorder diagnoses, but they can't get treatment because they can't afford treatment. But if they have Medicaid, all of a sudden there's a way to fund those types of things, to be able to involve those offices with the court system to help navigate people that we try to divert into other programs would be very important, I think, to see them grow and flourish some more. I also think there's still a need in a way. We have Lincoln students that work for the Pringer Family Center that are doing internships there. There's a way to involve those students as well to try and shepherd people in the right direction to change those ways to make our community more safe.
Thank you. Tim?
I think there's some wonderful opportunities, and they don't have to be all after offense. They can be prior to offense. But our community, which is a wonderful, giving community, and if you didn't know that, go walk some of the streets of Jefferson City in the summer and work up a pretty good sweat and knock on doors and ask people for a vote. You'll be surprised. You'll be amazed how many people will answer the door, and if you're hot, visibly hot, they'll invite you in. They may offer you a drink of water. We have a very giving community, but people need to know what the needs are. And I had an opportunity a couple of months ago to sit with Charlie Jackson, as Brian had mentioned, former captain in the Highway Patrol, and he was speaking to a group of kids from Lincoln who were from more than 1,000 miles away, and they had gone to a store and they had stolen some items. And Charlie was saying, why did you do that? And interestingly, they said, a couple of them said, well, it's October and they haven't turned the heat on yet at Lincoln, and we're cold. And a couple of the items they stole were blankets. And the first thought that popped in my head was, we have so many churches, we have so many bodies of Christ in this community who would love to know that there's a need and could meet that need proactively, could work with people. So I think it's very important. It doesn't have to be necessarily after an individual offends. Could be proactive, could be before that, where we let churches know, let community groups know, here are some possible needs, and then let those who may be inclined to offend, maybe in a circumstance where they have needs, let them know here are places you could go.
Thank you. All right, our next question. For more than a year, this will go to Brian. For more than a year, the Jefferson City Council debated making the city prosecutor an appointed position and ultimately voted to keep it an elected position. Do you think the city prosecutor should be an appointed position or an elected one? And what about the municipal judge? Explain your reasoning.
Thank you. I think both the judge and the prosecutor should be an elected position. The reason being is that, one, it's accountability to the citizens in Jefferson City. It forces you to go out and be involved with people, to go to events, to meet people where they are, to talk with them and see what the real issues and concerns are within our community. Another thing is the elected position is much less political often than the appointed position. The prosecutor and the judge should be controlled by no one. They're controlled by the law and the oath that they took to the Constitution. And when they become an appointed position, then it becomes more of it can become more of a control position. When Judge Walker and I went down to, a town in southern Missouri looking at becoming a paperless court one time, there was a prosecutor there, and they had a case where a person had a suspended license, had got reinstated, and he did not amend the ticket to a no-op, which meant the person that went through the trouble to get reinstated would then be resuspended again. And I asked him, I said, why don't you amend those to keep them legal? Because if they're legal, they have insurance on their car now that they're driving, except they have the insurance to get the license. They're going to drive without the license anyway. They often let their insurance lapse. It becomes much safer for the community if they're driving legally with that license and insurance. And his response was, the council doesn't want me to. And so it takes that discretion away, I think, from the prosecutor to talk with people, to see where they are, to meet them where they're at, and make those decisions. And also, it's just a great amount of accountability to the position and to the people when you're forced to go out every 2 years, talk with them, meet with them, and get their feedback on their views of how things are going in the city.
Thank you. Tim?
5 years ago or so, I went to hear and took my wife to hear Justice Antonin Scalia from the U.S. Supreme Court. And Justice Scalia said, we 9 justices on the Supreme Court are about the least representative people you're ever going to find. They're people with a great amount of education. They're people from 1 or 2, sometimes 3 law schools. They're people typically from the coasts, not from flyover country, as they call Missouri. And frankly, I'm happy to be from flyover country. And Scalia's argument was, we are accountable really to no one. And I think Scalia would agree with me and with Brian that judges or positions like judge and prosecutor both ought to be accountable to the people. They ought to be elected positions, not appointed positions, serving at the whim of any individual. I think it's so important for especially people in judicial capacity to be elected. Now, we do have in our courts, I've been in all the different courts in levels of courts in Missouri. The circuit courts are elected. The appellate courts and the Supreme Court are not. They are selected. And I tell you, from being in front of some of those courts, you can tell that they don't feel sometimes accountable. Some of the judges don't feel accountable to the people anymore. So I think it's important it remain elected.
Thank you. Angela?
I believe that when people are elected, there is an accountability aspect to it. I will say that I've looked into the reasons that the city council and the reason the mayor felt that it was necessary to maybe look at that change. And sometimes what you find out is sometimes people are elected and they're not doing the job that they were elected to do. I think the city council and the mayor at that time had a tough decision to make, and they were looking at some alternative ways to fix some things that were going wrong in the city. So I stand by their decision to go that route. When we're looking at elected position, there is an accountability, but if you look across this nation, there are people that have been in office for years that never get put out of office by the people that vote for them, and there's probably one in everybody's mind that they can think of that is not a great politician or not a great judge or not a great representative of the people. So not always because someone is an elected person does that mean that they're going to be held accountable, because not always do the voters hold them accountable. We like to think that, and we hope that's what's taking place, but sometimes it doesn't. I would say that my main stance is that it does hold people accountable, because it does make you go out in the community. Last Saturday, I was knocking doors. I've been at an event on Friday night, on Saturday night. I was out meeting people. If this was in a position that was just appointed, there's a lot of times that people don't go out and do those things because they know they already have that job. When you're doing an elected position, your job is to make sure that you're meeting people and that people have met you and understand what you stand for. Sometimes you don't have that when it comes to appointed positions, and you do get where you run into circumstances in bigger cities where someone may get a job based on the fact that they're friends with someone. And I'm sure everybody in this room can think of situations where you've even been in a state job where that's happened. So there is an aspect of accountability for elected officials that I think should stay.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to begin with our closing statements. The candidates will have 1 minute to share any thoughts that they have with voters. So we'll start with Tim.
I'm sure the other two attorneys will agree you could barely say your name in a minute if you're an attorney. You're used to closing arguments that go on for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but I do appreciate you being here with us tonight. I hope we've answered some of your questions. I ran for Associate Circuit Judge on one of my favorite Bible verses, Micah 6:8. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. And that's what I would attempt to do. Now, I am also reminded of a verse from King Jehoshaphat of Judah. In 2 Chronicles, he appointed a bunch of judges, and he gathered them together, and he said, fellas, people, judges, I want you to go out. I want you to remember the Lord first, because you're judging not for man, but for the Lord. And I want you to take great care when you issue a verdict, because the Lord will be with you in your verdict. But he said, show no injustice, no partiality, and no bribery. And I think that's important for any elected official, especially a judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela?
Well, first I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. I'm really amazed at how many people are here. This is a great turnout, and I think it's great that so many people in this community care about what's going on a municipal level. You go to a lot of cities, and that's just not the case. What I would suggest is that you go out and you talk to your friends, you talk to your family members, find out information. It's always important to be a very educated voter and make sure that the candidate that you're voting for, that you're not just voting for them because someone said something or did something, that you're voting for them based on their merit. You're voting for them based on, will they do the job? Will they come to work every day? Will they work hard for you? And those are all things that I know I will do for you. I will come to work every day. I will work hard. Anybody that has ever met me knows that when I do something, I do it at 110%, and that is what I will do for this municipal judge position.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you. And again, reiterate the thanks for having us here tonight and showing up. You know, in 8 years as prosecutor, I prosecuted over 80,000 cases, and tried close to 2,000 trials in the municipal court. We developed DWI court program, things for mental health issues, addiction issues, homeless issues, jobless issues. We identified an area of town where there's a lot of stealing going on of groceries. People didn't have food. So we started a food bank in that area, and the crime rate dropped significantly. As the judge, I would continue those programs. I would continue to use that wisdom, that discernment, to try and figure out what the proper punishment for each situation is. I will adhere to my oath to the Constitution. I will follow the laws that have been set forth in front of me, and I will judge with impartiality and fairness. I would just ask the voters to give me that chance to vote for me on April 2nd.
I want to thank all three of you for coming to this forum tonight and answering these questions. We do encourage voters to get out and make a choice. At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute break so that we can get our next candidates at the podium, and we will begin then.
Okay.
to work with the police department to help them better do their job, better serve this community, and better proceed with their jobs as they need to. It is to be fair and honest and open with the citizens that are here and they're going through the court, and to try to work with people as much as possible to, in the municipal level, to not make their way back to court again. Whether that be through some sort of punishment deterrent or through a program and assistance that could be provided to help them not make their way back into this court. I don't think the role of the prosecutor is to have a cookie cutter type of plan. Every case is different. The facts of each case are different. The defendants are different, and their backgrounds are. So being the prosecutor is not as simple as saying, well, this person was speeding, or this person stole from Zestos, and this person also stole from Zestos, and it's the exact same thing. I think the prosecutor needs to take time, review each case independently, and proceed accordingly for what's best for the situation.
All right. By way as a follow-up, the judges mentioned this level of creativity in sentencing. If the objective of the judge and the prosecutor is to be fair, to be consistent in meting out justice, how far does creativity go? I mean, what are some of the realms of when creativity isn't really the solution?
Okay.
Scott.
That's a good question. I thank you for that. I think it depends on how the creativity is being approached. If I've got two different people that have sped 15 miles over the limit, am I going to get creative by giving them a different dollar amount of a fine? I don't think that would be right. But there are ways to get creative by coming up with tailoring some sort of adjustment to an offer or to a punishment based on the type of crime that's out there. I don't think you can treat two people that have done the exact same thing and just say, well, one person's going to have a $100 fine and the other person's going to have a $200 fine because I think they have more money. I don't think that's where you can get creative. But I think the creativity comes in how do we help this person to not commit this crime again and not find their way back on the same type of offense. So it's not in a creativity of a specific amount of fine or community service hours, but a creativity in how we can come up with an alternative solution as opposed to a fine, because I've seen them here for 3 other speeding tickets at 15 miles per hour before.
Okay. Galen?
So as a prosecutor, we have what I think prosecutors like to refer to as our prosecutor's toolbox, because in that box, that proverbial box, we have all the different tools and mechanisms that a prosecutor can utilize in determining, recommending an appropriate sentence. And so the prosecutor can take into account their priors. Why, if they're a repeat offender, why are they continuing to repeat the same crime? If they have no offenses, no prior offenses at all, what was it that made them commit this particular crime? And what in my toolbox would be the best and appropriate punishment, deterrent, or rehabilitative tool that I can utilize based upon the facts, the defendant, and the situation. And so I think that is where the creativity sort of comes in, is what are my various tools, whether it be a mentor program like we already talked about that we have in this system, whether it be the DWI court, whether it be reaching out to volunteers to help provide blankets to the Lincoln students because their heat's not on, or whatever it is, all those things that are available in our community. It's knowing who to call in the community, where to reach for those resources, and which is the appropriate tool that I can use as a prosecutor to try to make sure they don't reoffend, make sure that they're both punished, but also that that their punishment fits the situation. And also to protect the citizens of the city from crime. So.
Okay. So how achievable is it? Well, we'll start with Galen on this question. Brian mentioned as current prosecutor thousands of cases he's overseen during the course of his time as prosecutor. How achievable is it to go to that level of of detail on individual cases.
Well, I think that I think when you talk about a lot of the city cases, so first of all, we're talking about city municipal court, so the significant number of our cases are going to be parking tickets or speeding tickets or trespass type cases, okay? So when you start counting each and every case like that, I mean, that's not one or two speeding tickets does not have the same time and resources of a prosecutor that, say, a felony has, okay? So I think one is a very efficient, useful use of your time as a prosecutor to review the cases, look at them, determine whether or not this is the appropriate charge, what's an appropriate sentence. So I think one is just a useful efficiency of your time, but I also think we can't get bogged down in the number of cases, okay? Because one prosecutor may say, well, I handled 1,000 cases in a year, another one says, well, I handled 8,000 cases in a year. Well, maybe those 1,000 cases were all felonies, and the 8,000 were all traffic tickets and misdemeanors. I mean, so you can't really compare apples and oranges by a number like that, okay? But there is a huge caseload. There's no question. Whether they're small, big, whatever, it is a big caseload. And so I think it takes a very efficient worker to review these and do them, and pull out the ones in looking at a report. Is this a significant, different, interesting type of case that's going to require something different from my toolbox, or is this just your basic speeding ticket? And is this their third one or is this their first one? I mean, that doesn't take a whole lot of time to make those kind of determinations and then make an appropriate recommendation.
Okay. Scott?
Whether it's attainable, I don't really think that matters, because this is the job that I'm trying to do for this community. This is what I signed up to do, and whether it's attainable to spend a little bit extra time or not, that's not the point. Work ethic is something that I've never been accused of falling short on. And if it means that we got to put in an extra couple hours on our Wednesdays to make sure we're looking at the cases, then that's what the people have elected us to do. So is it attainable? Yeah. If you're willing to put in the work, anything's attainable. And that's why I'm here. I'm not here to try to get by as quick as I can and get my cases in and out and hope that I've done enough. I'm here to do the work and put in the time. That's what I've always done in everything I've done in life. I believe if I'm going to do it, I need to bust my tail to do it and do it right. And so that's, whether it's attainable or not, is immaterial, because it's what needs to be done.
Okay. Scott, we'll go with this question with you. Do you think sentencing practices have been too harsh or too lax?
Thank you. That is a very difficult question to ask without more context. Each case should be judged on an independent basis. So to say that we've been too hard or too easy thus far is really difficult to answer without knowing why a sentence maybe was lighter than something else or more harsh than something else. Things that play into it, the record of the person that's here, whether this is their first or 10th offense, whether it's the first or 10th charge that they have, and whether they have 4 other charges sitting at county and 4 other charges in 2 other states. So whether to say we've been too lax or too hard thus far is really impossible to answer without knowing more about each individual situation. I think that Judge Walker and Mr. Stumpy have done a very good job with our municipal court system. I think that we have a court system we should be proud of here in Jefferson City. I think there are other municipalities in this state that really look up to us and strive to do what we are doing. So I think that continuing what we have done is really the way to go, and looking at things individually and determining whether or not a certain situation deserves more leniency or a little bit more harsh of a stance.
All right, thank you. Galen?
So I think that one of the issues that we've seen that have sort of been brought to the forefront in the last, say, 10 years or so is not so much the sentencing, but what happens in city courts, which ultimately sort of caused the legislature to pass Senate Bill 5 and make some reforms, specifically in regards to sort of the lower level traffic and misdemeanor cases, is that what was happening is in some, not in this city necessarily, but in some cities, people would plead guilty and they would be imposed a fine and a court cost. And then when they didn't pay their fine and court cost by the deadline, they were getting arrested for failure to pay their fine, and then they would sit in jail sometimes for 4 or 5 days before they would finally be brought in front of a judge and then finally released after 4 or 5 days, and either say, okay, well, since you didn't pay your fine of $250, we're just going to sentence you to the 5 days and call it good, but now they owe a jail fee for the 5 days. Or we have the situation where they're charged, they can't pay their fine, they come back in 30 days to tell the court I need more time, they come back another 30 days to tell the court they need more time, and so this just goes on and on and on. How can you expect somebody to go to their job, take care of their children when they're having to go to court every 30 days to say, I need more time, I need more time? And so now what the legislature's done, what the new statutes, Missouri statutes require, is that if you cannot pay your fine, if somebody is sentenced to a fine, first of all, it limits the amount of fines. There's caps on the amount of fines you can do. So you can't anymore say, well, I'll mend your ticket down to 5 over, but you got to pay a $500 fine. So the fine is limited, so that's the first one. But then secondly, if they cannot pay their fine, and after the time that they've been given to pay the fine, they haven't paid it, the first thing the court has to do is issue a show cause order. Like, you need to come to court and tell us why you can't pay, and have a show cause hearing on why you can't pay. And then the judge has to determine whether the reason for not paying was a legitimate reason or was it just an excuse before they can just put them in jail for failure to pay a fine. Okay, my time's up. Come back. Try to talk faster.
All right, next question. Galen, what penalties would you pursue instead of fines or jail time for minor offenses?
So I think there's a lot of options. Obviously, one is going to be what we call an SIS, or a suspended imposition of sentence, where they could then do some type of community service or attend a class or do something along those lines, kind of like what we'd already heard from the judges, different alternative programs, right, that they can do as a sentence instead of a fine, especially if they can't afford the fine, right? Another option would be, sometimes what's appropriate is what we call a deferral or a deferred prosecution agreement. And a lot of times this is appropriate, especially for youthful first-time offenders. And this is an agreement that's signed between the prosecutor and the defendant that says, okay, yes, the defendant signs an agreement saying, yes, I committed this crime. And the prosecutor the prosecutor says in the agreement, I'm going to dismiss this case on the condition that you not commit another crime for 1 year or 2 years, and that you do the following. Maybe it's go to counseling, or maybe it's do some community service, or maybe it's going to a marijuana awareness program class or something where they have to do these specific things. They provide proof to the prosecutor's office that they've done those things within the time frame, and the case is never filed. But what that agreement, though, does for the prosecutor and for the defendant is that it gives the defendant is they were a first-time offender, they made a mistake. If they entered this agreement, if they never commit another crime, it goes away. It's gone, as if it never happened, right? It gives them a second chance. But what it also does is it says, but if you do commit this crime again in the next year or 2 years, then I get to refile the case, because part of the agreement is they waive the statute of limitations. So I can refile the case if you commit it again. So it's kind of like sort of like a hammer or a stick, I guess, to make sure that they're not going to reoffend, but it also gets them some kind of community service, working with the community, so they realize, so they're giving back to the community for the crime in exchange for not having the case filed.
Thank you. Scott?
Some alternatives to sentence or to fines. Community service is the easy answer, but let's not just tell people, go do some community service. Let's try to find ways that make the community service beneficial to that person. If they stole from Goodwill, let's do some community service at Goodwill. Let's go in and let's learn about the people and the business that you stole from, and let's learn about how this affected the other people that work there, and how this affected the people that you didn't even realize you were affecting. Let's make it more meaningful, okay? Another option, in addition to the community service that's tailored, would be a victim impact panel. We heard all the judges talk about, all the judicial candidates talked about the benefits of learning a little bit about the victim and being able to hear from the victim. So victim impact panels throughout the community, being able to hear if you've got a DWI, being able to hear from other people who have had family members affected by other people driving drunk, or being able to hear from some real life examples to put a face to the jacket that you stole, and make it a little bit more meaningful to help deter the next time you go out and you're thinking about doing it again.
Okay, thank you. Scott, next question starts with you. Candidates for judge and prosecutor have mentioned they want to continue expanding municipal court programs. Give a specific example of how you want to improve the program and why that specific improvement.
Sure. We've heard a lot of talk tonight about the programs that are out there and how we can improve specifically with mental health. And, I'm going to touch on that. A commitment from the defendant to participate is the number one thing. And a lot of times we have people that have a mental health need that is either undiagnosed or unmedicated or just out there that simply nobody knows how to get the treatment for. So being able to increase awareness of what is out there so that those people can make the decision to move forward with it would be a big step. And I don't think this can just be done at the municipal court level. I know that there are talks at the county court with Judge Walker and Judge Joyce and Locke Thompson, the current prosecutor, about a mental health program and at the county level. I represent the public administrator here in town, and I have for the last 6 or 7 years, and I deal every day with someone that has a significant mental health need, and I'm very familiar with the effects that has on those people, and also a lot of those people are in the criminal courts, and the effect that untreated or unmedicated, undiagnosed mental health issue has caused for these people. So I really think that is something that the city and the county can collaboratively work together to try to really help the community. And as far as the funding, Mr. Stumpy mentioned, there's not a lot of it, but there are ways to look at the cases that might qualify for DWI court at the county or mental health court at the county, and try to work with the prosecutor's office at the county to see, hey, I've got some cases where these citizens could greatly use services that I can't provide here. Can you help me out? And try to work collaboratively with them to better everyone.
Okay, thank you. Galen?
So, as an assistant prosecuting attorney, I worked really closely with the alternative courts program that were at the county level. And at the time, we had DWI court and drug court. And both of those courts, and now we have the Veterans Court as well, which I'm also familiar with, having represented people on the defense side that entered into the Veterans Court. And so one of the requirements of all of those courts is that they have to be, the case that they've committed or the crime that they've committed is a felony. And the reason for that is because the expense and the time commitment is so great to be involved in a DWI drug court or veterans court that it's not worth it if it's a misdemeanor. Does that make sense? So I think these alternative courts are great. And as a defense attorney, when I'm representing somebody who says, oh, I want to go to drug court, so I can have the advantage of it being deferred, right, or it goes away. And I say, let me tell you, that is a lot of work. Okay, I mean, they have to go to meetings they go to drug court or DWI court once a week or once every other week. They have to meet with their social worker, they meet with a counselor, they go to AA meetings or they go to NA meetings. I mean, it's not an easy skate thing. And so and it has an expense to it too. And so I think when we talk about some of the alternative courts plans for a municipal, where we're talking about traffic and misdemeanors and lower level misdemeanors, we need to look at what is the cost going to be to the city? And are there partners out there that we can, or I can as the prosecutor, bring in or connect with or help the defendant connect with these services that are available so that they can get the treatment that they need, as opposed to actually having a per se city city municipal drug court or a city municipal, well, we do have the DWI court, I know that he does, and that's done an online program, so it doesn't require extra employees or extra individuals to help work the program. I'm out of time, sorry. Okay, I'll stop.
Galen, as city prosecutor, what partnerships would you form with groups or agencies in town for programs to improve safety in the city?
Okay, so going back to what I was just explaining about the alternative courts plans, which is right there, reaching out to people, knowing this community, knowing what services are available, know what kind of places, who can provide or help this particular individual would be the first thing. Making those types of partnerships to help to implement these sort of alternative courts, kind of like what we're talking about, but on a smaller scale as opposed to a full-blown DWI court, drug court. Does that make sense? Okay, then. I absolutely think that we are missing the boat when or if I'm the prosecuting attorney or if I'm the city prosecuting attorney, am not going into the schools and talking to our high school students about the ramifications of what they may consider, just a little tiny infraction. And I'm talking about speeding tickets. I'm talking about driving while their license is suspended, driving without a license. 16-year-old doesn't have their license yet to borrow mom and dad's car. These kind of things have serious ramifications. Minors in possession of alcohol, possession of marijuana, these kind of charges have a big impact on them, especially if they think they're going to be college bound or trade school bound or community college bound. And I don't think that our high school students really understand the potential impact. And so I think that would be the first thing. Second thing, I think, as I know when I've been to Lincoln and I've heard from Lincoln students, that they feel like they're not really part of our community. A lot of the students do. They come here, they feel like they don't have a good relationship with law enforcement. They feel like they don't have a good relationship with the rest of the community. And so I think that would be, and Lincoln is part of our city. And so I think that going out and into at Lincoln, where the students reside, giving them information about our community, making them feel welcome, letting them understand this is where city court is, this is what are the various rules and things in our city, and making them feel welcome to our community. And so that would be another partnership I think we should reach out to.
Thank you. Scott.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Galen said. I don't want to give her credit, but those are great answers. So getting into the schools is very important, okay? The high schools, the college, Lincoln University here, and making sure these people, the first time that they meet us shouldn't be when they're here and when they are learning now what they've done wrong and how they could have done it better. Let's get out and have those conversations early, okay? Let's get into there and let's talk to them. And listen, my wife hates how extroverted I am and how easy it is for me to go out and meet people and talk to them. And getting out and knowing the services that are available and meeting with these students or the community organizations and being able to know what is in our toolbox, as Ms. Carver said, and being able to utilize that properly. So really educating ourselves and educating others, but also working with the police department. I think the police, I had an opportunity to speak with some of the police department last week, and it was very eye-opening to me to hear from their perspective. But I think utilizing the police to hear how do they think we could better reach out to the community, and how do they think that we could better provide education to help in reducing the crime before it starts, and really utilizing their experience and their knowledge. They're the ones that are out there every day dealing with it, and to not use that, I think, would be unwise. So really partnering with them, getting their perspective, knowing what we have available to us, and educating people as early and as often as possible.
Thank you. Scott, next question starts with you. For more than a year, the council debated making the city prosecutor an appointed position and ultimately voted to keep it an elected position. Do you think the prosecutor should be an appointed position or an elected one? And what about the municipal judge?
Sure. I absolutely believe that it should remain as an elected positions. I've been fortunate over the last few weeks and really getting out and meeting a lot of the citizens from this community, whether it be at different events or stopping by their front door. And I've learned that how proud Jefferson City is of what we have and who we have representing us. And I don't think it would be right to take that away and take that out of the hands of the citizens. I mean, if you look around how many people we have here on a Tuesday evening, it's a testament to how invested this community is in having a say in who is going to be representing us and who is going to be upholding the laws of the state and the city. So I think it's very important that it remain as an elected position, and as well as the judge. And the other hand is I want to be accountable to the people in this room. I don't want to be accountable to the council or the mayor. I don't want to feel like I owe anybody favors when I'm looking at a case and trying to determine what the right course of action is, or if I were the judge to look at a defendant and determine what the right sentence would be. I don't want to feel like I owe it to anyone else other than the people that have put us here, and I think it's very important.
Thank you. Galen, same question.
I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other. A lot of cities and municipalities appoint their judges and their prosecutors. A lot of them elect. I think that there's always the option, or there's always the chance of abuse in either scenario. I think one of the issues that was happening, like in the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County, was you were having the same 5 or 6 individuals that were acting as either city prosecutor or city judge in various different cities, and so there was this sort of quid pro quo thing going on, right? So I don't think that is fair at all. Probably the most important thing, I think, is that they remain nonpartisan. I think it's great that we don't have to run on party for city judge or for city prosecutor. A person that I respect very much in my life always used to say the difference between a good Republican prosecutor and a good Democratic prosecutor, nothing. Because they're there to do justice, they review the cases, they do what's right, and they serve justice. And so I think it's good that whichever way it is, I think it should remain nonpartisan. And the other issue with I think some of the issues of whether it should be elected or appointed is that the prosecutor especially must be independent, and they cannot feel like they have pressure one way or the other. But they can feel pressure from voters as well. And yes, they're accountable, but sometimes what's popular may not be what's right. And so the most important thing is that a prosecutor is independent, and they feel that they're there to do what's right.
Okay, thank you. Galen, have you observed how the current municipal court system operates, and if so, in what fashion? Based on what you've observed, what would you suggest should be handled differently?
Yes, I've observed it. And I have a lot of questions that before I would start like saying this needs to be changed, that needs to be changed, I really want to sort of get in and see how the insides of it, why is it being done this way, and what are the advantages to it being done this way. I think some concerns that I have that have been brought to my attention is that we have there was one day where people just come in because they haven't paid their fines and they're there to ask for more time. And they're paying $5, $10 because they can't pay their fines. So I think we need to figure out some kind of program or way that we don't have to make people keep coming in to say, I need another 30 days. And I don't know what the solution is. I know how in the county court, you're sentenced to a fine or court cost. If you don't pay it within 30 days, it actually goes to a debt collection service. Now, I'm sure the debt collection service makes money off of it, okay, but it's not up to the judge to have to bring the person in every month to say, do you need more time? So that would be one issue. Another issue is that I don't know if people realize this, but the city municipal court is not on CaseNet. Now, Holt Summit's on CaseNet, City of Fulton's on CaseNet. They're online, and you can search. You have to go to Jefferson City Municipal Courts, and you can search, a case to see what the status is or whatever. I don't know why the decision was made not to be on CaseNet, and so before I could say, yes, we need to be on CaseNet, or no, we don't need to be on CaseNet, I would want to get in and find out why was that decision made, what were the advantages. Now, as a defense attorney, it's kind of nice on behalf of my defendants that have city cases that it's not on CaseNet, because it means the CaseNet trolls don't know about it, okay? But it certainly is much more convenient to everybody else, to attorneys, to individuals, if they're part of. And CaseNet, or what we call JIS or OSCA, the Missouri Courts Office of State Courts Administrator, they provide a lot of services to the courts, reports and information and things like that, that they do if you're on CaseNet. And so would it be an advantage for us to be on that so we could be part of those reports? Okay. I'm out of time again, sorry.
Scott?
Okay, I have had experience here in the municipal court as an attorney for some defendants periodically, not a ton. I'm not one of the attorneys that comes in and has 20 cases on my docket and spends 45 minutes with the judge. So I have had some, and I have been pretty impressed with the way that Judge Walker ran the courtroom, and he's continued that up at the associate level. So as far as the biggest thing that I would like to implement and improve on is accessibility from the prosecutor for the citizens as well as the attorneys that may be involved. This is a part-time job, but that doesn't mean it's part-time hours. So right now, it seems like there's a lot of availability, maybe one day a week, and that's not something that I think is fits everybody. There may be a citizen that really needs to speak with the prosecutor, but they work every Wednesday from 8 to 6 at their job, and they don't have an opportunity to have that conversation. So I think from the prosecutor's perspective with the court is being more accessible to the community, not just on one day a week or at a specific time on that day, but being available, not 24/7. Please don't call it 3 a.m. But being available more time throughout the week, Monday through Friday, and being available out there for everybody to reach out to and know how to get in touch with you.
Okay, thank you. Scott, how safe do you think Jefferson City is, and what's your role to maintain a safe environment?
Okay, I mean, I think Jefferson City is safe. We hear in the news the real major crimes, and there are some. There are some areas that are more affected by that than others, and there are some serious crimes that go on here. I'm not from Jefferson City, okay? I chose to live here, and I would not have done that, and I would not have brought my wife here and brought my young child here if I didn't think that this was a safe community and a good place to raise your family. I'm real proud of Jefferson City, even though I wasn't born here. And I think that Jefferson City is safe. There are things that can be improved on, sure. But if everything was perfect, people like Galen and I would be out of jobs, okay? So I think that we can improve on some things, but I think Jefferson City is safe. As far as what the prosecutor's role is, the prosecutor is vital to that. The police department and the prosecutor being able to maintain that level of safety and that level of comfort for the citizens. If the police are constantly arresting the same person for the same type of crimes that we know lead to more violent crimes, and the prosecutor is doing nothing about it, that is not going to help keep this community safe. So it's a municipal level, and it's the minor crimes, but it is the gateway crimes to more repeat offenders and more serious crimes at the county level. So the prosecutor here is vital in helping address those and try to cut them off before they become bigger problems for the county prosecutor's office.
Okay, thank you. Galen?
So yeah, I was raised here, grew up here in Jefferson City, left to go to law school, came back, raising my family here. So I do think Jefferson City's safe. I feel safe. I have to admit sometimes I don't always lock my car. That's how safe I feel. But I think as a prosecutor, my role though is to really know when is a crime pertaining to safety of our citizens and when is the crime just stupid, right? Like when is this crime just a stupid kid or a person being stupid, making a stupid mistake, and when is this crime something that actually affects the safety of our citizens and our community? And that distinction then requires the prosecutor to look at and be useful resources. Use our resources that we have here, like our jail, resourcefully. Our jail is there to protect people and to punish. And if we're just throwing people in jail because they make stupid mistakes, it's not an efficient use of our resources, and it doesn't necessarily make us any safer. We need to make sure that if we're putting someone in jail, it's because they've had every opportunity to fix their mistakes and they need punishment, or because they need to go to jail because what they did was harmful to our citizens and makes our community not as safe. And that's a good use of our jail. So I think that's my role, is to say, in order to keep our community safe, we need to say this is a crime that affects our safety as a community, and this is a crime that was just somebody being stupid.
Okay. Galen, we'll start with closing statements with you.
Okay, well, my name is Galen Carver, and I grew up here in Jefferson City, and I am currently in private practice at Carver Michael Law Firm here in town, and my husband, Justin Carver, and I have 2 children, one who's here. Both of them are teenagers now. I was an assistant prosecuting attorney. Okay, so I was a teacher first. I graduated from University of Missouri. I taught at Simonson 9th Grade Center, and then I went and taught in Cairo, Egypt, of all places, for 2 years. Came back, went to law school, met my husband, dragged him back here to Jefferson City after we graduated from law school. I clerked for Supreme Court Judge Mike Wolf, and then I got a job with Richard Callahan as assistant prosecuting attorney, where I worked for several years. And then I left and went into private practice, where I've been practicing all kinds of different civil cases, but then also criminal defense, because obviously as a prosecutor, I handled a lot of high-level felony cases, low-level misdemeanor cases, traffic cases, both bench trials and jury trials. And so then as a private attorney, I've done the same on behalf of defendants. So I have a good working understanding, knowledge of the criminal justice system, and I'm ready to be your prosecuting attorney. And I want to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you to the News-Tribune also.
Thank you. Scott.
Okay, again, thank you all for being here. It is important for our voters to be educated, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out and get to know the candidates and the issues. Listen, I decided to run for prosecutor because I care about this community, and I care about my family and wanted to be in a safe community. I've got a 4-year-old, and I kind of looked at it, and I am in a unique position as an attorney where I can take some ownership of the safety of my community, and I can take some ownership of what is happening around me. And that is the main motivating factor for why I decided to run. This is something that I want to do, and something that I want to do well for the people here as well as my family. I've really enjoyed getting to meet so many people as I have over the last couple months, and Jeff City is just a great place, and we have a lot of people that we should be very proud of. I ask that you come out April 2nd, vote in the elections, and I ask that you support me for your city prosecutor.
We thank you for coming out and answering these questions that we've submitted to you. Appreciate your candor and your willingness to share your thoughts. So, again, we encourage voters to turn out April 2nd for this race and to select the candidate of their choice. So we're going to take a short break and return in about 5 minutes for the mayoral forum.
Killed me in notes.
As mayor of the capital city for the last 4 years, and we've moved forward on so many great projects in the community. So I think we've built up a lot of momentum, and the last 4 years have been very proven that we have a strong community and we have a lot to look forward to in the future. Also, my background as a small business owner and growing up in this community for 3 generations and really having a love for this country and our community has helped me to serve even better. And I appreciate the love and support of my parents, and that's what's made me who I am today, and feel like I would be an excellent choice for re-election for mayor.
Thank you. Taiwan, same question.
Yes, sir. As far as my background with the current issues with our youth at stake, with our homeless problem and our opiate problem, I'm a veteran. Our veterans are suffering. I'm a college graduate. Our college graduates are needing externships, jobs after they graduate. I'm a small business owner. I created from scratch. I know how to guide people. I know how to advise people. I know the downfalls of not being able to get a business loan. I've gone homeless. I know where people are suffering at. I know the programs to get people on the programs. I've lived on the programs. I've raised 2 beautiful daughters in our community that are here with my grandchildren tonight. I'm from this city. I was born here, and my background has brought me to this position. I've done fast food work. I've done real jobs. I've customer service, government. I've worked for Robin Carnahan. I've been in volunteerism. I've been an advocate, and I'm for the people. So that's my background.
Thank you. Taiwan, what are your top 2 goals for the office?
My top 2 goals for the office is, number 1 is going to be youth. The current crimes is what the judge and the prosecutor that was, they spoke on tonight. Those are the issues. In order to master that, we're going to have to get our families back in order. Being homeless has opened up my eyesight to see the reality of what the big issues are, and it goes back to either the drugs or homelessness. So my second part is going to be affordable housing. Until we get people completely housed, we have to teach them financial education, and that's basically my 2 biggest goals.
Okay, thank you. Carrie, same question.
The top 2 goals that I would have are to continue to make our community safe and strong, and having, I think that's very important for our community, and also continuing our revitalization and growth that we have, namely with things like prison redevelopment and seeing that through. That's been a goal from the beginning. In fact, during my first term, goals included prison redevelopment, revitalization of Capitol Avenue and riverfront access, and as we're moving forward on those goals, would like to see that continue to thrive and move forward, but namely the top 2 would definitely be moving the prison redevelopment forward and continuing to have a safe and strong community.
All right, thank you. Carrie, what's the primary role of the mayor in your mind?
The primary role of the mayor is to lead the community and to listen to the citizens and the community, and just have a vision that follows the lead of the citizens. So certainly to lead and to listen.
All right. Taiwan, same question.
90% of a mayor's job to me would be networking the community. In order to network, you have to understand the people that are out here, and it's just not people that are well off to do. It's people out here that are suffering. 50% of our working class is service jobs. As far as networking, providing opportunities for the youth, providing opportunities for affordable housing, and providing opportunities for families to really be reformed and transformed in order to move forward into society here in our community. As far as the city development part of it, or it's not city development, the city networking within the employees, the city council, having a relationship on all levels with the city workers, with the fire department, with the police department, with the parks, having beautiful relationships to be able to actually sit down and have general conversations with them. Networking is about the biggest part. You got to get out into the community. You have to be the face of the community. You got to understand that we're where we are as far as our location in America, to be able to bring in businesses, as far as opportunities for the youth, as far as real estate development, and as far as basically offering opportunities for people to truly transform themselves, because there's a lot of people that are out here suffering. This is why our court system is the way that it is, as they spoke on tonight. This is where our county is, and that's what they talked about tonight, and as far as across America.
Okay, thank you. Taiwan, how would you grade the city's approach to diversity and inclusion?
The approach would have to actually be kind of researched. The population here is pretty much all white. When you walk into City Hall, that's the reflection that's actually in there. So as far as what has been going on to reach out to Lincoln, I'm not sure. I know that as a mayor, I would reach out to all 4 universities here. I would actually hold, public forums to try to get people jobs that qualify and see whether or not the issue is either a cultural thing or if they're not skilled for the position. I really can't answer as far as whether or not the city is not trying to not hire a minority type person without actually doing the research. I would have to actually see the applications. Sometimes people are afraid to apply for a position in life if they fear or they come from fear of not being able to qualify from where they come from. Depending what the applicants look like, that's about the only way to actually tell, but our reflection in our city is not what it is. We do have minorities here. We have, 10% African Americans here, and we're not populated within the city government or anything like that. So I would definitely have to do the research. I don't want to speculate.
All right. Carrie, same question.
Thank you. As the second woman to be elected as mayor of the capital city, it's great to see that there is a leader in our community that in the last election that the voters voted in a woman as mayor, and so that alone shows a little bit of an acceptance in our community. I know sometimes I'll present to groups and they'll say, "Oh, you're the mayor? You're not what I expected a mayor to be," and they may have a preconceived notion of what a mayor is. So one of the most fun things about being mayor is getting to talk with school groups and talking about not to have the challenges that people might think based on what they may think that we should be, what they may think a mayor should look like or a mayor should be, and whatever you may want to do going after your dreams. And actually had a young woman who came up to me afterwards and said she'd wanted to be a welder or go into a profession that was predominantly male, and that it was great to see women in leadership. So having women in leadership, I think, is important. We have it at this level. At the level of diversity, we have recently revived the Human Relations Commission within the city, and the commission has done great work in the short time that they've been active again. In fact, they've done many community events and outreach. They've worked with realtors, schools. They have many programs that are planned, and they've tried to engage in the community. So it's great to have a diverse board looking at how can we be more diverse as a community. Diversity and inclusion is very important, and finding ways to continue to do that. So we are certainly making a lot of progress in that area. I'm very proud of the work of our Human Relations Commission as well. Thank you.
Carrie, next question. How would you assess the city's economic development efforts?
Our economic development efforts are strong. We have a great partnership with economic leaders in the community. We work through the Chamber of Commerce to do our economic development, and there's been a lot of work and projects that they've worked and aligned very closely with the city on, working together with us on projects such as the potential port project, to name one. So our economic development is priority, working along with the Chamber. Economic development and growth is important for us to look at our assets as a community and what we can use that makes us unique, that makes us economically have the potential. And things such as prison redevelopment, we're the only city in the country that has a capitol, a river, and a historic penitentiary, and those are three things that we need to utilize. They're things that we already have as a community, but revitalizing our history, revitalizing Capitol Avenue, and using those to the benefit of our community so that it brings economic growth. We're seeing that now as we've had developers come in for the old shoe factory and the JCD building and coming into that area, and we're seeing the growth happen there. So working alongside other entities in the community and other businesses as they want to grow. That is the role of the city. So our economic development is strong. Thank you.
Tawan, same question.
Currently, there's over 800 jobs that are available in our city. So until, our youth are tapped into, when I say youth, 16 to 24, are, taught again how to work, are given an actual opportunity once they graduate, a decent job to actually stay here from Lincoln, from Columbia College, William Woods, Hannibal LaGrange, whatever university. The people that are here that are suffering, that are on drugs, we got to get them rehab in order to get these jobs, filled. We can keep creating, inviting tourism in and making things happen, but if the people are not rehabbed or families are not together or not housed properly, we can't continue the economic development in our city, because the jobs are going to continue to grow. If you have, tourists that come in, who are going to be there to service the people, who are going to, fold their towels, get their food at IHOP, who's going to be there if our people are addicted to drugs or if they don't have proper housing. So until we get that even going, the economic development, we can keep creating jobs, but the people are not there to work. The service is not going to be excellent like a capital city should be operating. When you go to DC or when you go to Austin, you want excellent customer service. Right now, the way our city is, the condition that it's in from the people that are out here suffering, until we actually get the people back up and running and productive in our community, the economic development should be, it's kind of at a halt. I mean, people are here going to work, but they're not. 800 jobs is a lot for Jefferson City. 40,000 population, 42,895, 800 jobs, that's a lot. So until we get our people, back functioning, being able to get to work and focus and maintain a job, basically the economic development, there's jobs here, but are we going to bring people in, or are we going to get our people together that's actually in our community first?
Tawan, you've said your history with homelessness inspired you to run. How big of a problem is homelessness in the city, and what would you do to address it?
Currently, on the Housing Authority waiting list, there's 400 families that are on the public housing waiting list. There's 600 that's considered on the Section 8 waiting list. Since I lived at the Salvation Army, there were families in and out, of the Salvation Army. As far as what my plan is, basically people need emergency housing first. The reality that the block grant did come into the city, that was in the newspaper. People want to buy a house, but people are not ready to buy a house. It's a big goal to buy a house. I've been trying to do it for the last about 15 years myself, being a single mother. Emergency housing is needed first. Once people get emergency housing and go through the necessary steps to get back on their feet and get back on track from whatever they have experienced in life, then we can move them on to transitional housing. That may require, 1 year to 2 years. Then we move them on to shared housing. That may be a 3 to 5 year program before a person is actually ready to purchase a house. Now, we do have some people in our community that are ready to purchase a house, but they need to go through actual classes and know what home ownership means. Like I said, as far as the type of homelessness, we have people that are sharing homes right now that's not reported. That's a program that could be created, a shared home program with the people. Transitional housing to give them time to, heal from being homeless. Homelessness takes you through a whole lot. It takes you through a whole lot to where you need to transition back into life. And so everybody's goal basically is to own a home, and we can get there because the funding is here through our not-for-profit organizations. Homelessness can be healed or accomplished here in our city.
So let me circle back before we go on. So how big of a problem is it? I mean, give me an idea of numbers of people.
How big of a problem is it? Out of the 50% of the service jobs that people are here going to work, I'd say out of that 50%, probably 40% of those people have some type of home economic problem, as far as whether they can pay their rent, on the way to eviction, behind in rent, $2,000 or $3,000, gonna move, with their income tax check, trying to figure out a way to buy a house, have 6 or 7 people living in their house, or might just decide to leave the house. As far as population, there's different reports. The thing about statistics is you have a hospital that can count, you can have Samaritan Center that can count, you can have Salvation Army that can count, Common Ground, but if people don't admit it, if people are not there when they do the head count, like they did the head count in January and they came to Salvation Army, those numbers were not correct because there was nobody there as far as considered to be homeless, because if you're sleeping in a room, you're not considered homeless at Salvation Army. If nobody's, if they're in hotels, they're not counting those people. So as far as the true homelessness, we don't have those numbers. Those reports that are out here are not the reports that are actually the complete, accurate number that could be made available. When you have people that are living in public housing that have roommates that should not be there, those people should be counted as homeless, but they're not. When you have people that are in hotels, I've been there, paying $500, $600, $700 a week, those people are homeless. You can't use a hotel address. So as far as when you ask me how many people are actually homeless, I cannot actually give you, I can give you a percentage out of the people that I've experienced from being at Salvation Army and watching people get a job and knowing that they're still there, and then maybe they get an apartment within, 2 or 3 minutes, or 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 months of being there, because Salvation Army's program is 90 days.
Okay.
That's basically, the statistics are inaccurate. It's going to be difficult.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Carrie, from your perception, how big of an issue do you believe homelessness to be, and should it be a priority, and how should it be addressed?
It is an issue. It is an issue that the city works on. We work closely with the city's public works, the Planning and Protective Services Department, and they coordinate with other entities here in the community. They work on the project Home Connect every year and help in offering the assistance to connect people with resources. So we work very closely with the Planning and Protective Services here. Also, we work closely with the entities like Salvation Army that provide assistance, and we work with the churches and others in trying to connect them with the most need. And we've recently had a tour of the Salvation Army, but that's not new. We've been there before. We're in communication with the leadership at some of the entities such as Salvation Army to ask what we can do, and also encourage our community and community members to support those organizations that help others, and such as United Way and Salvation Army. The city team works together to try to make our community better, working with Samaritan Center, and sometimes whether it's on a personal level, and as a mayor I may be working with those organizations, but we also try to encourage others in the community to also do their part and help others.
Okay. Carrie, one of your New Year's resolutions was to address a downtown parking issue. Define the problem and how you would address it.
Yes, parking is something that we've been looking at, adding parking in the downtown actually for several years, and we've recently worked on studying the area and doing a parking impact study to see where is the most need. There are certain parking lots that have a high demand and that are the higher rate lots that are close proximity to the Capitol and downtown. And as we look to add businesses and loft living space and office space in the downtown, we know that there is a need for parking in order to accommodate all the growth. So we've had a lot of growth. There's very few empty buildings, but we need the parking to go along with it. So what we currently have in front of us is the study has identified about 5 locations for potential, whether it's a parking structure, things that we could do in the city, and we will be bringing that forward here in the very near future. But in this term, I think it's something that's very important to identify the parking needs and what we can do, because being a capital city, we want to grow. We've kind of almost outgrown the pace of what our parking is to meet up with the growth that we've had in the downtown area. So that's definitely a priority.
Given that you say there are 5 sites, assuming that they are of different sizes from parking lots to parking garages, ballpark idea of costs for what this parking vision would be and how and where that money would come?
Yes, and that would differ based on where the parking study, actually everything is public documents as well, and has been discussed at public meetings such as the Public Works and Planning. So all the information is out there and available. I believe the draft study that we've looked at will be finalized soon with the final numbers, the numbers of parking spaces, the cost per parking space, which would vary depending on how many spaces, whether it's 300, 400 parking spaces, cost per space depending on which site is selected, and also with the parking fund, we have a good opportunity because we've had the parking garage, we've had the parking fees that have been paid over the years, so we have kind of a separate fund that would be put towards parking in the future. And we also know that our Madison garage is nearing a point where it's going to need some maintenance as well. So we need to continue to look at maintenance of that for the future parking as well. So it's definitely something we need to look at, and it is in the near future. It will be looked at committee, and then council and the mayor will move forward in deciding what the best choices are.
So as a follow-up, the parking fund, does it carry sufficient funds for the repairs to Madison that you mentioned, as well as construction of some other parking structure?
It would be used for that. We would need to look at also revenue from parking fees and rental spaces, so it wouldn't necessarily fund the entire project, but a lot of it would be used for that. But there would also be the fees for those that would want to rent the spaces. And to kind of put it in perspective, there is a spot or one of the lots in the close vicinity to downtown in the Capitol that, and I'm going from memory, I don't have the study in front of me, so I don't really have numbers, but I'm just going from memory, is, there's around 100 people on the waiting list. And I know the waiting list doesn't turn over often because those spots don't turn over often either. So there are places that have very high demand, and with that demand also comes revenue, because those are parking spaces that people rent on a monthly basis, and some are hourly, but in the downtown is the closest downtown proximity on High Street. There are no meters because we want to encourage the parking there, but I'm talking about the long-term parking.
Okay. Taiwan, do you believe parking is an issue, and should it be a priority? And if so, how should it be addressed?
Well, doing my research originally here through the prison redevelopment, 2004 when they shut the prison down, I thought a part of the plan that parking was supposed to originally go there. So the developers, I don't know what's being developed without looking at the RFQ, if that's going to be an option, that's going to be your best location for downtown, considering that you would have to probably tear down some structures or something like that, or have people park somewhere and do a share right into town, parking lot, or maybe put it where St. Mary's is, since they did leave the parking garage there. Those would be the options, just thinking off the top of my head. As far as funding, without actually seeing the budget, I thought it would, be taken care of with the prison redevelopment part of it. You understand what I'm saying? So without actually seeing the budget for parking, that would be the two ways that I would go about it. St. Mary's would be an excellent location. I'm not sure what the plan is with that without actually, having the knowledge of it. But they left the parking structure there, so that would be easy to do in my brain. And then going back to, actually, I think it was 2000 when the first blueprint came about with the prison redevelopment, when the idea was there to put the boutiques in some apartments and a parking garage. So I'm not sure what the developers are going to do, but that would be the way that I guide them, considering that there's not much opportunity, downtown to put anything else, unless, the river's there, but you can't park in there. So, I'm not sure, where else we would actually put parking besides the prison or St. Mary's area, or do a share a ride program, putting them somewhere to, kind of bust them in. That's about the three options that I would give. As far as funding, I would have to see the budget. I can't determine something or speculate on nothing.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Taiwan, how safe is Jefferson City for its residents and its visitors? What can we do to make it safer for everyone?
As far as the type of crimes have increased with the youth, we're got to tackle this youth problem. Here we are getting ready to go into the summertime. The youth, they want to enjoy, the turn-up music, the concerts, whatever, what's going on out here in the streets. But we got to tackle this. We need to get to the high school, before they get out of school. We need to tackle Lincoln, and kind of direct them to where they can go. There is one building here, the Community Bridges building, that is trying to get open. They need major money. I don't know if it's going to be possible. I told them I'd try to help them fundraise any way that I can to get them open so the youth can actually have somewhere to go. I just learned my Savannah's is going to be closing down. I don't know who has access to that. It's going to take investors to make this happen for the youth. That's the first thing, to kind of educate them when the youth are sitting here listening to music, to shoot them up, bang, bang, you know, and do all these things. You know, I've raised 2 beautiful daughters in this community, and it's hard, you know, and parents have to go to work. You got to think about, you know, who's going to pay your rent, you know, where the food cost is going to come from. So the first tackle was, you know, is actually the youth. As far as the safety, we are pretty safe. It's the type of crimes and why crimes are going down, how they're going down. With the homeless part, it's all kind of crimes that go down when you're homeless. People are trying to get money for cigarettes, you know, they're trying to get money for tampons, a bus pass. It's all, you know, crazy. The moral of the story is, and we have to get our families back together. You know, we got to get back to these churches, the not-for-profits. We got to network with them. The money is out here. When I say I have gone through a lot, my family was broke up, you know what I'm saying, for 2.5 years behind what I've experienced after my house fire, and I'm still here smiling, sitting here for the people. I'm here for the people. That's the main reason why I'm here, because I don't want nobody else to go through what I have gone actually through.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Carrie, how safe is Jefferson City for its residents and visitors, and what can we do to make it safer for everyone?
Jefferson City is a safe community, and our city council has made it a priority, along with myself as the mayor, to continue investing in public safety when possible. We've made sure when we budget that we are doing what we can to fulfill the needs within the city budget to continue strong public safety. We're fortunate. We have an excellent police department and fire department. We have an excellent new fire station coming on board to replace the aging fire stations. So our fire trucks are new, and so we're keeping up with that. We're doing our best also with police cars and vehicles, trying to maintain and keep up with that. So it's important that we, at the city council level, that we are able to invest in the budget as much as we can to keep public safety a priority. There's also things that we've done when it comes to the outdoor warning sirens. It's something that we work with here and deal with to make sure that those are maintained. And another thing that was recently implemented is the notification system for emergency warning notifications that the public can opt into. So we're doing our best as well to keep the community and the public safe, but at the city level is definitely keeping up with infrastructure and our needs of our police and fire department. And as mayor, and also in the 6 years I served as a city council member, public safety was always a top priority. And it still is, and it will continue to be. Thank you.
Okay. Carrie, next question comes from reader Marvin Phillips. Jefferson City officials are trying to attract more visitors and residents, and yet the city streets are in pitiful condition. Currently, only $1.2 million is allotted annually for resurfacing city streets. How much more should the city spend annually to get our streets up to higher standards?
Right now, the condition is worse than it typically is, coming off of a very harsh winter season. So that is something I've heard a lot of, the condition of streets and roads and potholes. But it also brings to light the bigger picture that although we're out there now having to repair what this long winter weather season has done, that there are a lot of the ongoing infrastructure needs with our roads. Yes, the resources are very limited, but you know, we have to prioritize and figure out which streets are in the highest need of repair, based within the resources that we have, within the budget and the dollars that we have to spend. Yes, it would be nice to have more, but if we did, that would mean taking away from other areas too. So it's definitely a balance. But as we look forward to maintenance, we need to make sure that we are allocating what we can. There were ways statewide. I know it's an issue infrastructure is, and even with the failed ballot issue that was statewide, there was funds allocated in there that would have been allocated to cities and counties to address road issues and streets. So, and also we do work closely with Cole County. That's why the sales tax is so important, because city and county funds a lot of those funds are going to maintain our infrastructure and roads. Some of our bridges, in fact, are in the county and city joint partnership when we look at some of those repair projects that we have on the horizon. So a lot of these we have to plan out years in advance based on the dollars we have. So yes, we need more. How much more? Well, that's very limited resources that we have. So we need to continue to grow our city so that we can continue to grow the maintenance as well. Thank you.
But circling back, given the resources we have and you and the council have to make priorities, do you believe that more money should be diverted to infrastructure improvements, stormwater, streets, and if so, from where should that money come from?
To a degree,
within the existing budget.
Looking at our existing budget, and that happened this year where council pulled money for stormwater, I believe, they moved money from general fund for stormwater, and it wasn't even necessarily a budgetary item, and that was a big priority. I did not agree with that because there were other areas such as roads that could have used the improvement. There really is not an easy answer. There's not a place that we can say we would take it. I mean, we need to maintain the public safety. We need to maintain our roads and infrastructure, and currently we really are. We are maintaining as much as we can. We are providing the services. When we think of the Public Works Department and the excellent job we do with snow removal, well, we have to think about the snow plow and the cost of the snow plow and the cost of the materials it takes to put on the road and all of the costs associated with keeping the roads clean in the first place. So it's not even just the roads itself. There's a lot around that. So where would we take it from? I would not advocate for taking it from public safety and those departments, but it's a balance. And when you look at our budget, it's a balance across all departments, and we can't put all our resources into one or the other. So I think we do the best we can with the limited resources we have for our roads. Unfortunately, at this point in time, a lot of them are in need of repair from the weather, but long term, we have a list of priorities, and if there are some that are lower on priority or not on the priority list, they come through our city process, and we look at what the needs are in those residential areas or highways and or roadways, and work together to try to make them a priority. If they, it's all about prioritizing what those road needs are, and we, like you said, we only have so much in order to allocate, but I wouldn't advocate pulling from some of the other areas.
Okay. Taiwan, same question.
Can you restate the question? I'm sorry.
Yes. Jefferson city officials are trying to attract more visitors and residents, and yet the city streets are in pitiful condition. Currently, only $1.2 million is allotted annually for resurfacing city streets. How much more should the city spend annually to get our streets up to higher standards?
Considering this is a capital city, streets are going to be very important. I know recently the governor was, there's a grant, information, $100 million somewhere that I read, I'm sorry. I would tap into either the county or the state in order to, see if there's any funding available, since they are working in the same city. Basically offices are right up the street for the county, the Capitol's right up the street, and see if there's any funding, for infrastructure, and which I believe that the governor did just, there was $100 million awarded, because I think he wanted to get a business plan, and they shot that down, and so they came up with $100 million in the budget. So that would be my first stop as the Capitol. Let's work as a team here. There's 3 different governments here. We all share the same streets. The next part would be looking for grants. There's grants out here, that could be tapped into, as far as how much it costs. If it's only, you said 1.2 was set aside, let's get our roads done. People don't need their cars tore up. People can't afford to feed themselves, so let's kind of make it happen is what I would try to do. Looking with the county, between the county and the state, and then if not, some type of grant funding for infrastructure. Other than that, we would have to get to fundraising. If that's not in the budget, you still try to kind of figure it out, because people can't keep tearing up their cars, tires, all these different things. As far as looking at the budget, there's ways to like get grants for maybe another department, like for Parks and Recreation. If there's funding in Parks and Recreation, there's grants for that. I just read up on that, for in urban areas. So there's ways to move the money around without seeing a budget myself. I do have a certificate in accounting, basically networking, trying to figure it out to make it happen for the capital city of Missouri.
Okay, well, as way as a follow-up, I will say the state and the county are both struggling to meet their own infrastructure needs. So being a skeptical journalist, I don't see Governor Parson, a nice fellow, cutting us a check to fix streets. So what are the fundraising approaches you suggested?
What fundraising ideas would I do?
Yes.
Basically, we could do a ride-along, a motorcycle ride. We could have, a day party, or we could do a concert, to raise some money in the community. The youth need something actually to do. The youth are the ones that have a $20 bill, through the summertime, and get someone to come in here and do an actual concert to fundraise, maybe at Lincoln University, to raise $1 million to get part of the street done. This is the capital city. You understand? And as far as fundraising, there's opportunities out here to raise dollars for our streets, for our parks. Like I said, but as far as the parks, there are grants out here for our parks. There's money in the parks. We might have to move the money around, but at the same time, be able to get the money from grants for a different department that is actually available. There's a lot of grant opportunity out here. There's a lot of grant money out here that can be utilized. It may not be for the streets, but it could be for the parks, and that money from the parks could then go to the streets to get this, to get it done. So if you're saying the governor wouldn't write us a check, if you're saying the county's not going to do it, then there's others have to figure out another way to make it happen.
All right. Thank you. So, way of follow-up, and this will go to Taiwan. This was a follow-up from Marvin Phillips. He in essence suggests that dedicated sales taxes, such as what the Parks and Rec Department has, are spent on things that aren't as necessary as infrastructure. And his question is, what is your stance on the parks tax? Are you willing to push to rescind it? Are you, in essence, should we be spending more money on
the parks?
Needs such as infrastructure,
Right.
public safety, rather than, in his words, it was beautification projects?
Again, there is funding grant money out here for parks. And to do the research is the main thing for any city. If infrastructure should be taken care of first, along with the public safety, as far as the parks, yes, we can make it pretty, but it may have to be a community. There's ways to fundraise. In the parks part, people can come together into the city and fix up a park easier than we can do to do the concrete on the streets. So as far as the funding for the parks, yes, there is a lot of money. That's been the big topic out here to make our city beautiful. We do need a nice city, but at the same time, we have to have infrastructure. So we have to figure out a way to move the money to get the emergency things taken care of, like infrastructure taken care of. Then we come up with the park part of the money. So there's grants out here again, and there's way to make a park beautiful. Maybe you get children to go out there and decorate the park, to create, a swing set out of tires, to, use recycled goods, things of that nature, instead of actually using $1.5 million on a park, put it on the street. There's ways to move money around without having to raise taxes. You have to do the research. It takes a good research team to make anything happen. That's how your cities grow. You look at Austin. Austin's a great, example of a capital city. But when it comes to fundraising, there's ways to make it happen. We got parking lots here to be able to rent out to people that want to sell maybe some hats, maybe some T-shirts, things like that. And we might have to do it twice a month for 6 months to see how much money or revenue is actually brought into the city. People coming in to visit the city to come to these swap meets or antique shows or however it goes down, to be able to actually generate some extra revenue in our city to get the streets done.
Thank you. Carrie?
So the question was whether I would rescind the parks tax. Is that correct?
Well, I don't think he's suggesting you have the power to do it, but if you would be willing to push to rescind it
Okay.
in the effort to divert tax money to infrastructure needs and more emergent needs.
Okay, to answer that question, I would not be willing to push to rescind the parks tax. It was a voter-approved tax, and if there was an interest in the community as the whole to do that, they could. I haven't heard that. In fact, I've heard really more of the desire in the community to, highlight what we have as a community when it comes to the parks, and the greenway trails are one of the comments that I receive as one of the most well-loved things in our community. So no, I don't have any desire to do that or to lead that kind of an effort. If the community did, they could, but that is something I have not heard or seen a desire to do so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think at this point we will go to closing statements, and we'll start with Carrie.
Thank you. I have been honored to serve as mayor for the last 4 years and look forward to serving another term. This has been an amazing time of revitalization for our community. The projects that, such as prison redevelopment and riverfront access and the revitalization of those homes on Capitol Avenue and things that we've talked about in our community and frankly have been said that maybe some of those couldn't or would never be done, and now we're seeing the time that they are happening, and the community is encouraged to see that, and I would like to continue to serve as mayor and keep those projects moving forward, and also look forward to continuing to collaborate. We have great partnerships that have been formed with the city and the state and the county and our Visitors Bureau and the Chamber, and I'd like to keep that moving forward, so I would ask for your vote on April 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Taiwan.
Yes, basically, if I'm asking for your vote, it's real serious right now for our youth, for our homeless people, and for our drug epidemic out here. If you're involved in the court system, you already know that you go every day and people are in the courtroom, the same people every month, every week. The youth really need us. We need to be able to create the internships at Lincoln. I know how to do that. I did that for Robin Carnahan for 3.5 years. As far as the homelessness, I know where the problems are as far as the emergency housing, to the transitional housing, to the shared housing, to get onto home ownership for our people. As far as the drug rehab program, there's a team of specialists that are here. We have pathways, and we have, I just drew a blank, I'm sorry. The other agency here, we have doctors, we have a hospital. Just put it to you like that. Capital Region helps out. Basically, so the moral of the story is I'm for the people. And when it comes down to it, the people need help right now. And until we help our people.
Go ahead and finish your sentence.
Okay, until we help our people, tourism shouldn't be the #1 thing.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the News Tribune, I'd like to thank the candidates for participating in the forum tonight. I'd also like to thank Jefferson City and JCTV staff for their assistance in holding and broadcasting these forums. In addition to stories about these forums in tomorrow's News Tribune, we'll have a variety of other means by which you can become more informed about these races. We'll be asking candidates questions that we didn't get to tonight, and those answers will appear in upcoming issues of the News Tribune. Lastly, we'll be publishing a voter's guide on Sunday, March 31st. It lays out all of the many of the stands of all of the candidates on the April 2nd ballot. Tomorrow, we'll also be hosting a forum here for the Jefferson City School Board candidates who will be appearing on the April 2nd ballot. Our society is served best by an informed and active electorate. I would encourage you as voters to take advantage of these resources that have been put before you and then get out and vote April 2nd. Again, thank you for coming tonight and have a good night.
Thank you.